Okay, so we now go to the second video for our lesson number 3, and for this specific video we will try to discuss about how science and technology as a social world is also political. So first, let's begin this video by saying that science is a product. It means that people in a society consume science for their everyday living. So the technology that we use every day, we consume that, right? This knowledge that you are hearing from me, you are consuming that. Now, this is a part of a resource that is being generated by society, is being consumed and produced and used by the members of society for any type of reason. It's either to increase quality of life or to do other important stuff that we need to do. And just like any other product, the production of science in a society is socially influenced. So in our previous discussion, we argued that the identification of problem, which basically ignites a scientific investigation or a technological innovation, is influenced by the epistemological binders that scientists and the scientific community has. And this epistemological binder is influenced by many social and cultural determinants. So the production of science and technology in a society is socially influenced. The way science is produced, the way science is made accessible to people, the way that science is consumed, they're all socially influenced. Now, there is such a thing we call as a political economy of science. So political economy argues that there are sets of actors and institutions that are involved in the production, consumption, and reproduction of sources, goods, and services. So again, if we imagine that science is a resource, a good that is used by everyone or is for the public or for private consumption, then we can argue as well that there are many actors that control the production and the consumption of science and technology in a society. And we can agree there are certain sectors of society who have more access to scientific progress and technological innovation. There are sectors in society or social categories who are usually marginalized in society who have lesser access to technological innovation. For example, we can argue that one of the more important technological innovation that we have experienced since the middle of 1990s is internet connection. And we understand that the improvement of the internet connection is improved by scientific studies and technological innovations. However, the extent to which our internet is available is limited based on the actors and the institutions that control the distribution of this technical innovation that we call the internet. And that is the reason why there are calls to academic freeze, because not everyone has an access to internet and gadgets. And usually, the inaccessibility goes along the line of usual social inequality. The poor have lesser access to science. The indigenous people have less access to science. People of color have less access to science and technology. Females compared to males have less access to science and technology. And there are many actors and institutions in society that maintains this inequality in terms of production and accessibility in the scientific advances and technological advances. So, as we have argued earlier, there is a process to which science and technology is produced, consumed, and reproduced in a society. And remember my example on how research agenda is set in a society. There are certain actors that are limited to those in power in society, usually intellectual powers, governmental powers, that basically set the direction of scientific progress in a society. So it means not everybody gets to sit in the decision-making table of how science and technology propels in a certain country. It's only given to those who have certain positions or have certain power in society. In a democratic society, of course, we expect that those who are sitting are the rightful representatives of all sectors of society. But in real culture, we know that that is not the case. Usually, those who decides for science and technology in a society, just like any other sector in society, these are people in power, those who have more resources and are interested in amassing more resources and are not really the representatives of those who are oppressed and marginalized in society. So, who are the actors and the institutions that influence how the science and technology is produced, consumed, and reproduced in a society? Of course, we have the scientists and the inventors who do the science, who creates technological innovations. Next, we have the industry, the organization, and the households who make use of the scientific advances for personal use, for households, and probably for production of other materials and goods for industries and organizations. Another institution that informs the direction of science and technology in society in terms of how it is produced, consumed, and reproduced are the academia. The academia, which is of course comprised by the university, the research laboratories where all the technological innovations are being discovered, and the science industry complexes found in a given society wherein all of these innovations and discoveries are being processed. Now, in a society, scientists are also considered a commodity. Now, in most societies, there is like a certain way of how scientists are produced, and mostly it is through education. So, if you graduate your bachelor's degree, then you have acquired developing skills in order to perform research in a given specific field of study. And then if you take your MA or your MS, you can support the conceptualization and the conduct of research studies and scientific progress. And when you get your postgraduate degree, that's the time you can be considered as a scientist. Because if you're already PhD, your responsibility to society is to be able to conceptualize and design research activities in order to make the science in your specific field of study progress. And of course, at the end of the day, the science that you are creating in your field of study is supposed to increase the quality of life of people. And in terms of producing scientific knowledge and technology, there is a specific cycle that science knowledge goes through. So first, a scientist thinks and plans his research, and then he makes a discovery out of it, out of the readings that he has made, and then he gathers and analyzes data, and then they write and publish about their research in order for people to access the findings and make use of the findings. And then, yes, the findings will have some sort of impact to other people and will be birthing other research wherein other researchers will be able to create a related and an additive research, and then the cycle goes on and on. So scientific knowledge that doesn't undergo the same path may not be considered as a credible information that is worth consuming in society, in a science-driven society. And this is the reason why some indigenous forms of knowledge are minoritized in society, and even at times, or most of the time, exploited. For example, using the indigenous knowledge, the Yakoanoy people were able to make use of materials and resources found in their immediate environment and was able to turn them into products that was good for skincare and battling skin infection and inflammation. Now, what happened was that they made use of this product in order to make trades with other tribes. What happened after is that some scientists got a hold of the products that they were creating amongst the indigenous groups. They studied the Yakuanoy formula of creating the skincare product, and they patented it. And so, Based from the Yakuanoy way of producing skincare, a pharmaceutical company, a cosmetics company is earning, while the Yakuanoy people who originally invented the idea through their indigenous means are not getting anything. But there's a happy ending to this, and it is found in this video that I am sharing with you. However, it's not always a happy ending for indigenous peoples whose indigenous knowledge has been touched by Western science, and Western science was so easy to decide that we are going to sell this so that people can consume it and we will gain money, right? So, science community also reeks with a lot of abuse and capitalism as well. Now let's talk about science, technology, and the power relations to society. Now, when we talk about power, this is the capacity of an individual or group of individuals to influence the conduct or the behavior of other people and groups. So, in a society, a person can be ascribed of a power or could achieve the power. Like, for example, ascribed meaning you're born with it. For example, you are a white male born in an upper class family, then that is a power that's ascribed to you because there's so many privileges of being white, being male, and being in an upper class family. Power can also be achieved. Like, for example, you got elected for a government position, and because of that, you get to influence a lot of things in your given community or society. Or, for example, you are a diligent worker and you got promoted to higher level in your organization. That's an example of an achieved power. Variables that can determine a certain power in a certain person is class, of course, the amount of income, money, and wealth that a certain person has and his family has. Gender, with the social and also the sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression of the person. A race and ethnicity of a person is also a variable in terms of looking at the locations of power in a certain individual in a certain society. And of course, when the person or the group of people have more power, they have also increased influence to other people's capacity to access and amass resources. And usually the tendency is those people who have more power because of their economic position, because of their gender, and because of their ethnicity, usually take more resources from other people because of the means that they already have. Now, there are three dimensions of power. The first dimension is overt and unidirectional. An example would be your boss and you as an employee. It's very obvious based on the positions that you hold in your organizations that you have lesser power than that person. Second one is the second dimension, which is covert and latent. So, for example, between a man and a woman, men have more privileges than women, and women are more likely to be abused by men. Of course, this is covered because in the law of the land, usually we always declare that we will uphold gender equality, but in the ground, in real culture, we don't always see that being applied. So it's covert, it's latent, it's obvious, it's unobvious, and it's sometimes taken for granted, but it affects those people who are disenfranchised and marginalized in a big way. The third dimension is ideological dimension. Like, for example, your political stance, your political ideology, especially today in this very polarized society, can also lead you to get abused as well. Or, for example, your beliefs about religion and your beliefs about society can also cause you to be abused at the same time. So, ideological is the third dimension. So first, how does science and technology influence class relations and vice versa? Of course, when we talk about class relations, we talk about conflict theory as theorized by Karl Marx, and we think about the divisions of society as the capitalist and the ruling class and the working class. So, examples of how science and technology can further augment the already political unequal social structures in our society are as follows. First, agricultural technologies widen the gap between the poor and the rich. Those people who can acquire technology are more likely to progress in life compared to poor people. Like for example, this is not only in terms of agriculture, but of course in terms of other forms of technology. A child, two children, even if they have the same IQ and same academic performance and academic abilities, when someone has access to technologies for online learning such as gadget and internet and the other one has not, then the footing in terms of how they will be able to progress with their learning would be different. So access to science and technology and innovations such as gadgets and internet is so important in determining how equal people gets to progress in this society. Next, technologies used for work may leave workers feeling alienated for self, co-worker because of competition, fruits of the labor due to loss of control of technology to technocrats. So we all know that there are people who are getting unemployed because of robots and artificial intelligence and technologies that are found in factories. Robot hands can already do the same thing that human hands can at a more efficient rate. So people are getting laid off and therefore they feel alienated from their work. So as I said, technological unemployment brought about by displacement of manual labor by mechanical labor. And as we go through time, as more technological advancements happens, there are going to be lesser and lesser people needed in order for us to do manufacturing work and service related work. Like for example, sa McDonald's, you can already order using the touch screen in some of the more high-end and posh McDonald's. So that means that the ordering system can already be outsourced to machines. So probably the human resources needed to run that specific McDonald's may not be as high as compared to one that doesn't have the touchscreen ordering system. Last, alteration of the social nature of work and its transformation into an impersonal mechanical process. So we become more as cogs to a machine than as people bonding and relating to each other for each other's growth and interdependence. Now, gender relations and inequality can also be influenced by science and technology and vice versa. So, science and technology has both narrowed and widened the gap between men and women society. Like for example, narrowed meaning there are certain technologies that made more women capable for work. Like for example, reproductive technologies, right? Access to artificial contraceptive methods and access to knowledge about family planning already increased the possibility of women to get into the workforce. And that's the reason why more women are getting employed, because they have more control over their reproductive lives. But at the same time, science and technology has widened the gap between men and women society. Like for example, digital divide of internet connections and gadgets, more access is still given to men compared to women. So, science and technology has influenced gender relations, but in certain aspects, they are improving. In certain aspects, they are not improving or even getting worse. For example, science and technology in relation to war leaves a lot of women fatherless or husbandless, and therefore they have to take care of their children on their own. So this is increased burden of caregiving and breadwinning for women whose husbands are lost to a war, and wars are usually very much fueled by a lot of science and technological advancements. Now, a feminist critic to science and technology says that, you know what, science is a man. Science is so masculine, and most of the time, science is always attributed to masculine traits, and therefore it's so hard for a woman to penetrate into scientific fields of studies. So for example, most of the scientists that have discovered stuff, that we are learning are Caucasian white men. Diba yung philosophers nga lang ng science and technology? All of them are Caucasian or European white men. And there are only a few number of women who are able to penetrate and be known for science. Like, for example, Marie Curie. But in order for Marie Curie or other female scientists to be acknowledged in science, they also have to embody the masculine traits of science and technology. Because feminists argue again that science in itself, when we do science, you have to embody some sort of masculine traits like control. Control in science, control is a very masculine trait. Rationality instead of emotionality is a masculine trait. Dominance over resources when we do science is a very masculine trait. So females have to give up some of their femininity in order for them to get into science, if they do get into science at all. So and these things are opposed to the female ethos of emotions, feeling, expressiveness, and caring. Here, we see the global distribution of scientists between men and women, and we see here, of course, we have pink for women and blue for men. Not really appropriate to assign color with them, but I'm just assuming that. And if you see the STEM, sciences, mathematics and computer science, engineering, earth and atmospheric sciences, usually the natural sciences and the hard sciences are dominated by the men. And the sciences that are more expressive and caring and are into human interaction, such as biological and agricultural sciences, or the social sciences and psychology, are dominated by women. Again, why? Because these are more related to female ethos. And you see that now, while there's an increasing number of females getting into STEM courses like engineering, computer sciences, mathematics, physics, chemistry, there still is not enough. It's still not equitable. And female scientists and female students who get into these kinds of fields report that it's always hard for them because they feel left out, they feel discriminated by just being a woman in a given field of study that is dominated by men. And science and technology also became instruments for the objectification of women, right? The slimming products, dieting pills, etc., etc., cosmetic surgery, gendered product and innovations. This further increases the objectification of women, and this objectification is fueled by science and technology innovations. So I am linking also another video in the supplementary readings. I want you to read the college humor video about how certain things are gendered while they are unnecessarily gendered, right? And the bad thing and the weird thing is that when we start gendering stuff, they start to cost higher. Like, for example, this deodorant is for males, this deodorant is for females, and you would see that a certain gender has more, you need to pay more because it smells like sampaguita and the other one doesn't smell like anything else. So this is an example of the objectification of women as pushed by science and technology. And lastly, science and technology is influenced by cultural relations, racial and ethnic inequalities, and vice versa. However, we will not be talking about this for this video, and we'll talk about this in a separate whole video. And then for the other types of relations like gender and class relations, we will also be discussing this in more detail through cases in future modules. So, for this video, we try to describe and argue how technoscience is political. We learned about the political economy of science, how science is a product, and how the distribution of science and technology can further perpetuate the conflict and inequalities that are already present in a society, in class, in gender, in cultural groupings, and how the production of science is usually geared towards only specific people in power.